What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. In today's episode, as usual on Fridays, is a NASCAR weekly preview, weekly prediction series. 2 weeks left in the regular season. Obviously, the finale is at Daytona, but this weekend they head to New England to go to New Hampshire. Let's get into some storylines. Logano picks up win number 2, and the streets are asking, is even year Logano back? Even year Logano always seems to find a way to be in the running for a championship. He's into the top 10 on points after being out of the playoffs for a large portion of the season. Can he continue to climb, or is it just a stretch of tracks that favor Penske over other teams? I think it's a little bit of both. Penske's still going to need to find some speed at some of these playoff tracks if they want Logano to be in it. But even year Logano seems to be here. He seems to be peeking out of the bushes, ready to strike. Hopefully, I think the previous format made it easier for him to go from zero to hero. I think this points format hopefully makes it more difficult for him. It was a two-man race most of the way. You had Blaney leading most of the early race, and then pit road and issues and different things kind of made him a top 10 car. But it was Logano and Briscoe, and they kind of alternated runs there for the last 200 laps. One driver would be good one run, then they would switch. It was back and forth, and Logano, right before making green flag pit stops, jumps ahead of Briscoe, and that was all she wrote, even though Briscoe did run him down in the end. Good run for two guys that were out of the playoffs in the spring and have since charged up the point standings. And I'm going to have Toyota has been very good this year, and in some ways unbeatable. They're the only manufacturer that has speed at every track type consistently. But Ford might really have these short, flat tracks figured out. You think of North Wilkesboro, you think of Richmond, you think of potentially even this week at New Hampshire seems to be playing into to Ford and specifically Team Penske's strong suit. And they might be able to continue to bring the fight to Toyota on these tracks. Denny Hamlin can clinch the 1 seed this week. 7 drivers have clinched their playoff spots, but Denny Hamlin is over 100 points up over second. A solid week this week. I don't even think it has to be that solid, but it's a solid, normal Denny Hamlin short track week, and he will clinch the number 1 overall seed. We used to call that the regular season championship. Don't know why we still don't, but I digress. Reddick sort of rebounded. He didn't wreck. He didn't finish way in the back. He had a much better finish this week. He's been reeling and reeling. He's still 4th in points, but I think this is the type of week right before the playoffs where you kind of stop the slide and you can hopefully start rebounding where you get momentum in the playoffs. Hendrick Motorsports finally looked good. It is their best race in weeks. All 4 cars found their way to a top 10, and some of that was passing a lot of cars on the day. Larson finally had a good week to stop the bleeding. Elliott finally had a good week. Byron found his way to back-to-back top 10s, and even Alex Bowman had a good run. Very good sign for Hendrick Motorsports after what has been largely a rough summer. Hocevar continuing to drop as well. Hocevar was 5th in points and is now outside of the top 10 after about a month of racing. Obviously, he blew his transmission. It's been a rough couple of races for Hocevar, a lot of DNFs and a lot of finishes in the back of the pack after getting all the way to 5th in points. And then the biggest news, Connor Zilisch will be driving for Hendrick Motorsports in 2028. Obviously, the news, Alex Bowman has 1 more year left. He will race in 2027, and then he will be retiring. And Connor Zilisch will be following him in 2028. One of the youngest guys in all of the national series of NASCAR. Well, maybe not including ARCA, but pretty young, even for Xfinity and truck standards at just 20 years old. One of the most hyped prospects, has had a very rough year this year, but has all the potential in the world and will be getting into Hendrick Motorsports equipment in 2028, which could be a world of positive for Connor Zilisch. Could be scary, some might even say. Some history at New Hampshire. There's been 1 race a year there in the next-gen era. The winners, 3 Joe Gibbs cars until last year. Christopher Bell, Martin Truex, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney. That is the order of next gen winners here. So probably the two teams you expect to be good on short flat tracks like New Hampshire and that have been good on them this year are the two teams that have won all the races at New Hampshire in this era. Best average finish, Josh Berry, 2.5. He's only raced twice here, but has done well in those two races. These other guys have all raced 4 times. Kyle Larson with an average finish of 7. And then Elliott, Briscoe, and Bell are all tied with the same average finish of 9.3, just inside the top 10. Most top fives, 5 drivers have 2. 4 drivers have 2. Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, and Kyle Larson. The other one is Martin Truex, who has been retired for 2 seasons now. Shows you how good that 19 team has been at New Hampshire historically. And then 6 drivers have 1 top 5 in the next gen era. Brad Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, Chris Buescher, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron. And then most top 10s, 4 drivers tied at 3. Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, and Chase Briscoe. 7 drivers tied at 2. Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, and Josh Berry. So a lot of the normal names you see at tracks like this. Some of the favorites to win New Hampshire this week. I have Joe Gibbs Racing and Team Penske 1 and 2. I think they will probably fill up most of the top 5 and most of the top 10. They've been fast on this track type all year. They've been fast at this track in the next gen era. Joe Gibbs Racing, I'm giving the slight edge to because they do have 3 victories here. Although last year's playoff race, they were back end of the top 10 fast, not race winning fast. And then Team Penske won it last year and has won more of this track type this season. But I think Joe Gibbs Racing is going to show up with something this week. Team Penske, Joe Gibbs are 1 and 2. Hendrick Motorsports has some good runs here. They looked good last week. I think they're firmly in third, maybe even they may even compete for a win. Kyle Larson and William Byron, we're 2 weeks away from the playoffs. Neither one of them have won a race yet, and that would have been looked at as crazy coming into the season. Maybe one of them, if not both of them, brings some speed. Don't forget about Chase Elliott either. 23XI is solidly the 4th team on these tracks now. They weren't always. Reddick and Wallace both have some good runs here. Their worst track type, I would argue, for 23XI is these kind of short, flat tracks, these short intermediates, however you want to phrase it. But I think that's been 23XI's greatest weakness. They've been better this year. They still need some consistency, but I still trust them to do well with the success they've had this year. And then RFK Racing, I'm putting 5th. Buescher has been good here. Keselowski's been good here. Preece, I think, will have a very good week this week. They haven't quite shown the speed that I expect out of them on this track type this season. And like last week was a rough week for RFK when you look at the raw speed. Preece was very good. He just had some things that held him back. I think he passed more cars than anybody else last week. But Keselowski and Buescher were both slow. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a surprise team. I thought if there was anybody I trusted over RFK, but Spire hasn't inspired me the last couple weeks. And who else is good? Like Trackhouse used to be good. They've been better on this type of track, so maybe Trackhouse. But I have the most faith in RFK, and that's why I'm going with them. Driver rankings, I think Christopher Bell gets to victory lane this week. He's not usually my favorite. He is pretty much always top 5. Give me Christopher Bell to finally snap the winless streak and not finish second at a place that has been his playground for most of his career, whether it's Xfinity or Cup. Joey Logano, super hot right now, already has 2 wins at these flat short tracks. He's looking for his 3rd. His teammate won here last year. Give me Joey Logano to have a good day. I have him 2nd. Denny Hamlin has not had the success of some of his JGR teammates, but he's still usually pretty good at New Hampshire. I think he has another good run. Kyle Larson coming off of a good week where he really showed speed and got better as the race went on. I think it's going to snap. I think that has snapped his skid, and I think he shows up with some speed this weekend. Ryan Blaney, the defending winner here. What track is Ryan Blaney not going to have a good run at? Give me Ryan Blaney 5. Josh Berry, very good at New Hampshire in his 2 Cup starts. He's been very good at this track type in his Cup career. I'd argue it's his best track type. Josh Berry, I think, has another good run, continues his top 10 stretch while trying to get a job for next year. Chase Elliott has been good at this track historically. He likes short tracks. He's a good short track racer. Give me Chase Elliott 7. Chase Briscoe, I have 8. He claims that New Hampshire's not a good spot for him, but he has top 5 average finish. Part of that was strategy. One race he finished second. He arguably didn't deserve to finish there, if you can think way back to, I believe, 2022. But Chase Briscoe has been very good on this track type this season, a top 5 average driver on this track type. So despite maybe some lack of success, he's been better at this track type. The 19 team has been very successful at New Hampshire, and I think Chase Briscoe continues that this week. Tyler Reddick is getting better at this track type. He has some good runs, has had some good runs at New Hampshire. He needs he's still in a fight. Like, he can still get the second in points, and they haven't had a good run, solid top 5 day all the way through. I think this is the week where they start looking to rebound. And this 10 spot for me, I thought about Ty Gibbs, and I know he's going to be fast. I think Ty Gibbs competes for a top 10. He's been a very good short track racer, but I wanted to do something more fun. I think 10th place, I'm going to give to the RFK cars. Right now I have Busher because he's in the playoffs and needs it. But Ryan Preece lost a lot of points to the cut line despite having a super fast car. Again, for whatever reason, he got marred back in traffic and just couldn't quite make up all the ground. But Preece was very, very fast last week. If you look at true speed numbers, this is a place Preece knows well. He's won a modified race here. It's kind of a hometown race for him, just like it is for Joey Logano. I think Preece shows up with some speed, and maybe Preece is there instead of Busher. Keselowski's been good here. I think RFK, I'm going to give that 10th spot to one of those 3 cars, while also respecting Ty Gibbs not being on this list despite being 3rd in points. Might be disrespectful. Into the regular season standings. Again, anybody with a star has already clinched their spot in the postseason. Denny Hamlin stays in first and can clinch that first seed this week. Blaney, Gibbs, and Reddick are all over 100 points back. They are only separated by 23 points with 2 races, so plenty that could happen between Blaney, Gibbs, and Reddick in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. All of those spots carry good, significant point values, so every one of those spots helps at the reset. Chase Briscoe with a little bit of separation after running well. He's at 715 points, which is 20 points up on 6th place, which is a tie right now. A tie that would go to Chase Elliott, but it is a tie between Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell. Both of those guys are at 695. Briscoe is at 715, so a 20-point gap. A good week this week. He should feel good going into Daytona. Briscoe, Elliott, and Bell have also all clinched their way into the playoffs after good runs last week. And then 35 back from Elliott and Bell to Kyle Larson. Larson is at 660 points, only 1 point ahead of Joey Logano, somebody that people were doubting if he was going to make the playoffs not too long ago, really going in the North Wilkesboro. Late June, early July, Logano was on the wrong side of the cut line. And now we're in August, and he's not just in the top 16, but he is 9th, 1 point back of Kyle Larson. 6 points back of Joey Logano was Chris Buescher, who, despite, he hasn't had a lot of top 5 runs and a lot of great speed, especially recently, but he's found a way to just minimize bad days, and he's still top 10 in points at 653. Somebody who's not minimized their bad days and has had quite a few of them recently, falling all the way to 11th, Carson Hocevar. 8 points back of Buescher at 645. William Byron, with a couple good days, is starting to march back towards the top 10. He's only 23 back of Buescher, which is doable in 2 weeks. Carson, he is at 630, 15 back of Hocevar. Suarez down to 13th. He has 618 points. And Bubba Wallace, looking in the rearview mirror now a little bit after Cindric had a really good race in 15th. Wallace is at 587 points, which is 31 back of Suarez ahead of him. He had a rough week last week, and Bubba Wallace is going on the type of stretch that has hurt him his whole career. He had such a good start to the season, had a bad stretch, started to claw back in, and now he's having another bad stretch, and he's kind of out of the points race now. 31 back of Suarez at 587. and just 13 ahead of Austin Cindric. He's 70 points to the cut line, so he should be safe, barring catastrophe. But Austin Cindric all of a sudden has the ability to pass Bubba Wallace. Cindric, as I mentioned, is in 15th at 574. And Shane Van Gisbergen made up ground to the cut line, I think, by 1 or 2 points, just a couple points. Shane Van Gisbergen in 16th with 2 race wins, plus 50 to the cut line. Ryan Preece, despite all of his speed and despite passing the most cars, did not get the finish he deserved. He is 50 points back of the cut line. That is a huge amount of ground to make up with just 2 races left. Ross Chastain is running well as of late, but it was too little too late for the size gap that he had. Ross Chastain, 63 back. Brad Keselowski probably out of it at 78 back, just couldn't ever rebound. Was in the top 10 early on in the year, couldn't get back there. And Eric Jones, man, that wreck at Iowa really hurt him. He's now 81 back, and what was right there on the cut line. And then ever since he and Reddick got into it right on the first lap of the race, racing for 4th and 5th at Iowa, Jones hasn't been able to recover. Otherwise, he could be right on Van Gisbergen's heel. It's going to take a miracle for anybody out of the playoffs to make it. Ryan Preece wish he had that penalty back. I know that. But this is a track Ryan Preece has been very good at. And if Shane Van Gisbergen has a good day and Preece can find a way to take advantage of the hometown race, kind of being a fellow New Englander, maybe Preece can get this gap close enough where the chaos of Daytona can get him into the playoffs. But there are your regular season standings. The number in parentheses is the amount of race wins a driver has. If they don't have any, then it means they haven't won any. Yellow are the guys who are the championship contenders and have been all year. Pink are the guys that I think, and I might be changing Bubba Wallace to green, but pink are the guys that I think have a championship winning team or organization. They have the speed and the ability, but they have to be seeded well going into the playoffs. And right now, a lot of those pink guys are fighting for those spots. Green are guys that I think should make the playoffs, but aren't championship threats, but are happy with their seasons, happy making the playoffs. And red is the battle for the cup line. And we'll see how many of these drivers can lock in after this week. As with 1 race left, if you can get to, I think with 1 race, if you're more than 75 points up on the cut line, I think you're safe is how that works. Because 75 is, or technically 76 is the most amount of points you can score in a race. So if you're enough points up, they will lock in, and I think a lot of them will lock in this weekend. Moving on to power rankings, Denny Hamlin stays at 1, another top 5 finish. He's far and away won. When you look at the advantage he has in the points, I think it's fairly earned, and he's still performing well. I have Blaney passing Gibbs. Blaney had a better week, and those two have been pretty even as of late. Ty Gibbs, that means he moves to 3rd. Tyler Reddick stays in 4th. Strategy didn't quite work out the way they wanted to, but they still finished solid, staying out that long. Just lost too much time on old tires. Chase Briscoe moves up to 5. Could have potentially challenged Tyler Reddick for 4. I think Briscoe's running much better than Reddick right now, but Reddick has a huge points lead, and it's like, which matters more? I guess power rankings, I could move Briscoe ahead of Reddick, but I'm going to wait 1 more week and see what happens before I do that. Briscoe up to 5. Logano up to 6 after that one. He's just been super hot the last month. Bell at 7. Led some laps on strategy, but was never going to be able to hold Briscoe and Logano off. Chase Elliott with a solid run up stays in 8th. Larson goes up to 9th. Buescher falls to 10. William Byron, after back-to-back top 10s, I have up to 11, right on the heels of Chris Buescher. Hocevar continues his fall in my power rankings after another bad week to 12. Cindric moves up after being definitely a top 5 car, maybe even the 3rd best car last week. I have Cindric up to 13. Bubba Wallace 14th, Suarez 15th. Both of those guys are struggling a little bit on points right now and are in danger of getting caught by Cindric. Definitely have not been racing their best when Cindric has. Van Gisbergen stays at 16. Chastain, again, too little too late, but it seems like they're finally figuring things out at the end of the year. Chastain performing well, has had a couple good runs back to back. Maybe even could have gotten more out of those good runs. Chastain I have at 17, Ryan Preece at 18. I've talked a lot about his race last week and the situation he's looking at. And then Keselowski and Jones, nobody deserves to be in the top 20 right now, in my opinion. Barry, if he has another good week, maybe he pops up in there. But Keselowski and Jones right now, I have filling out 19 and 20. That's all I have for you guys this week. Please put in the comments below, as always, who you think wins the race this week, who you think the favorites are. Maybe you have a comment about the points battle. Drop that in the comments below as well. Find a couch, watch some sports this weekend. Football is getting closer and closer. Baseball is in the midst of the push to the postseason. NASCAR is as well. So make sure you find a couch and watch some sports this week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Take care of your friends. It's a crazy world out there, everybody. Peace out.